Hello, I'm Maria Tabane, and today we are going to be covering the cardinal vowels of the International Phonetic Alphabet. These are cardinal, I guess, in the sense of ideal reference points in the vowel space. Okay, it's a system that was invented before the time of recordings of speech. Actual audio recordings, and it's from the days when linguists, maybe dialectologists, field linguists, what we would call them these days, would be wanting to write down the pronunciation of different words in different dialects, for example, and they wanted their reader to be able to have a fairly good idea of how the vowel sounds were pronounced without actual audio recordings being available. Okay, so back in the 1800s. It's a system that is very much based on the Romance languages, especially French, but I guess it also applies in dialects of Spanish or Italian. And I guess despite that, historical bias, it has served the linguistic community quite well because really things don't get much more complicated in terms of how the vowel space is organised. So yeah, we work with that. And I guess we still teach these ideal cardinal vowels, the International Phonetic Alphabet vowels, despite having audio recordings available to us, not just gramophones, but computer recordings and so on. We still teach it because at the end of the day, it's humans that perceive speech, and a computer can't do everything that a human can do. And so we want to be able to perceive vowels correctly, and we want to be able to produce vowels correctly. Perception and production are flip sides of the same coin. Okay, so we need to be able to work on those. So we're going to be working firstly on the primary cardinal vowels, and then also on the secondary cardinal vowels. The primary cardinal vowels are the ones that are much more common in the world's languages, and every language will have primary cardinal vowels. We'll go through those. And the secondary cardinal vowels are not so common, and they are much harder to hear. So we'll go through those as well. And there's also non-cardinal vowels in the International Phonetic Alphabet. We'll do those too. Just a little bit of, I'm hoping this is revision for most people, so I'm going to run through it quickly. Into how we describe vowels. We describe vowels in terms of height. Okay, so whether a vowel is high or low in the vowel space. And so here we would write high, and this will be high, mid, and then we also have low vowels down here, and here we have low, mid. Now, officially in the International Phonetic Alphabet, high gets called close, meaning it's close, and low gets called open, meaning that the jaw is open. Okay, I don't use that terminology. Some people use the close and open terminology. I use the high and low terminology. So yeah, just a bit of a warning there. And this is really mainly about the jaw position. Okay, E-ah. Is the jaw high or is it low? Okay, and the jaw and the tongue work together when it comes to vowel height. All right, so even though the jaw is sort of the carrier, the tongue comes along for the ride, so to speak. Okay, and then we also need to describe vowels in terms of backness, whether they are produced more front in the oral cavity or more back in the oral cavity. Okay, and maybe I'll just do that in a different colour. So let's do that in blue. So we have vowels that are produced at the front of the oral cavity and vowels that are produced at the back of the oral cavity. And then we have central vowels. Okay. And a good way to test front and back is to put the k, the velar stop k in front, and go ki, ki, ki for a front vowel and ku, ku, ku for a back vowel. Okay, so this is a good little test. E is a front vowel and oo is a back vowel. I'm hoping this is largely revision. I'm just running through it quickly in case it isn't. And you should feel your tongue is more forward for ki, 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 and more back for ku, ku, ku. Okay. So the reason for this is that, just rub that out. Vowels, I'll do my old chart of the oral cavity with my tooth, my alveolar ridge, and then going back along the hard palate to the velum. Okay, and then here's our velum. I've made it too big there, I can tell now, I always do that. Okay, back to the velar region, there's our little uvula. And then I'll do this as the pharyngeal wall here, and there's my vocal folds that are vibrating. Vowels are always voiced, okay? Well, they can be voiceless, but we just assume that the assumption is that all vowels are voiced, okay? So we'll just work with that today. We're not going to do anything different. And so let's just say that here is where our, it's probably not accurate, so I'm always doing this so unrealistically, not to scale. Let's say this is where our hard palate ends, okay? Where our teeth end is where our hard palate ends. And then we've got the velum, which is the, all along here, the soft palate, ending in the uvula. And what happens is that front vowels are produced in this palatal region here, okay? And back vowels are produced in this velar region here, okay? So ki, 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 we're at a front vowel, and ku, 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 we're at a back vowel, okay? So front and back is really to do with the position of the tongue. Yeah, I'll just stick with that for now. And then we can also have the rounding on the lips. So you might have noticed, and hopefully remember, that for ki, 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 our lips are very spread, okay? And it's unrounded. And for ku, 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 our lips are rounded, okay? Ku, 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 ki, ki, ki. All right, so in that example, backness and rounding are working together, but when we get to this, we're going to see the complexities of the vowels that they don't have to work together. And in the IPA chart, we tend to write the unrounded vowels on the left of a particular place and the rounded vowels on the right. You'll see that later on when we start actually writing out the vowels. We won't do that just yet. Just want to point out though, height is like the Y dimension, ER, and frontness and backness, think of them as the, frontness, backness is the X dimension, but so is rounding, okay? E-U, it's all going along the X plane, and so is ki-ku, ki-ku. It's all going front back, all right? So I hope I didn't confuse anyone with that. There's just a couple of more little points I want to say generally in relation to vowels before going too much further. I just want to say that whereas with consonants, we can really be pretty categorical about whether a consonant is a stop or a fricative, okay, for example. We can't be quite as categorical with vowels. We're talking more like a vowel space. There's a whole space and there's reference points in the space, okay? And hopefully you'll get an appreciation of that later on. So whereas we can say either we've got a complete stop closure, or we've got a fricative happening, or we've got an approximant happening, you can't really say, well, this vowel is definitely high, this vowel is definitely high mid. You can have a vowel that's in between. Oh, well, you can say a vowel is definitely high, and you can say a vowel is high mid. But you can also quite happily have a vowel that is somewhere in between those, okay? Whereas you can't really have something that's in between a stop and a fricative. So in that sense, vowels aren't really quite, in that sense, in that purely phonetic sense, they're not quite categorical the same way that consonants are, okay? And I also want to say that vowels are very sonorous. So what do I mean by sonorous? Well, okay, if consonants occupy this space up here, they're either a complete stop, or they're a fricative, or they're a Okay, so consonants occupying this space, or they're a fricative, or they're an approximant, okay. They're up here. Well, in the oral cavity, the vowels will occupy more like everything below, okay. They don't go into the alveolar region, but they do hang around that palatal and velar region, okay, in terms of articulation. And of course, the lips are involved too. I'm ignoring the lips for now, and I'm ignoring what's happening at the larynx. So consonants are high. They tend to have a high jaw position. I'm simplifying things here, but consonants are generally high, and then vowels occupy that whole space from, you know, downwards. So that's one thing that I mean by sonority. The other thing that I mean by sonority, and so the air is flowing very freely, okay. With vowels, the air flows very freely, and that's one of the things I mean by sonority. Whereas with consonants, it may be flowing a little bit more freely, like for approximants. But for stops and fricatives, it's definitely constricted, it's obstructed, okay? Or for nasals, it's not even flowing through the oral cavity, it's flowing through the nasal cavity, okay? So vowels have lots of airflow through the oral cavity. What that means is vowels tend to be louder. As broadly speaking, vowels are louder than consonants, okay? So that's a really important point. If you've listened to the syllables class, you may remember that we talked about sonority peaks in the syllable. Okay, so if you had a syllable like ba, 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 well, this will be the sonority trough for the p, and this will be the sonority peak for the ba, pa, pa. And syllables, a lot of people would say, are really just about finding the sonority peaks. Now, a vowel is going to be a sonority peak. Whatever consonants are around it, the vowel will be the sonority peak. If there's a vowel, it is in the nucleus of the syllable. It is the centre of the syllable. Vowels don't live on the edges of syllables. Okay? Vowels live in the centres of syllables. So they're really important. So consonants can live on the edge. In some languages, consonants can be in the centres of syllables, but it's not common. Okay? And that's only because there's no other vowel around to fill that slot, okay, immediately in that area. Vowels are sonorous, okay, they're really important, they're prominent, they stand out in the perception of speech. The airflow is unconstricted, and yeah, and I think that's, you know, just a really important thing to remember about vowels, and they are very important. Okay, I think I should probably leave it there, and then we can launch into trying to understand the different primary vowels and secondary vowels of the cardinal vowels. Okay then, thank you.